share. And so who is our first reader? Oh, somebody asked us, is Dr. Fananapazir presenting? He is presenting. We're just going to have some brief devotions first, and then he shall present. So here we go. Okay. So I think our first reader is Robin.
Yes, I'm trying to get the images out of my way. Okay. O son of being, bring thyself to account each day, ere there are summoned to a reckoning, for death, unheralded, shall come upon thee, and thou shalt be called to give account for thy deeds. Baha'u'llah.
1 hour's reflection is preferable to 70 years of pious worship. Baha'u'llah.
This is a blessed book, which we have revealed to you, that they might reflect upon its verses, and that those of understanding would be reminded.
Lameh, would you like to read this one? So, unmute.
Whom you're asking?
There you go, Lameh, she's there.
Verily I believe thee, O Mazda Ahura, to be the supreme benevolent providence. When the good mind came to me and told me assuringly that the reflective, contented mind is the best possession. Zoroaster Muslims.
A mind unruffled by the vagaries of fortune, from sorrow freed, from defilements cleansed, from fear liberated. This is the greatest blessing.
If we wonder often, the gift of knowledge will come.
O God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hand, thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. Oh God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. Oh God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself to thee, O Lord. O God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself. I dedicate myself to thee, myself to thee, O Lord. O God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my power, O Lord.
Still your mind in me, still yourself in me, and without a doubt you shall be united with me, Lord of love, dwelling in your heart. Hinduism.
Are they then not aware that they are being tested year in, year out? And yet they do not repent, and nor do they learn a lesson from it. Islam.
Our first teacher is our own heart.
We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our world.
The source of crafts, sciences, and arts is the power of reflection. Key every effort that out of this ideal mind there may gleam forth such pearls of wisdom and utterance as will promote the well-being and harmony of all the kindreds of the earth.
O thou who art turning thy face towards God, close thine eyes to all things else and open them to the realm of the all-glorious. Ask whatsoever thou wishest of him alone. Seek whatsoever thou seekest from him alone. With a look he granted 100,000 hopes. With a glance he healed 100,000 incurable ills. With a nod he laid balm on every wound. With a glimpse he freed the hearts from the shackles of grief. He doeth as he doeth, and what recourse have we? He carried out his will, he ordained what he pleased. Then better for thee to bow down thy head in submission and put thy trust in the all-merciful Lord. Abdul Baha.
Okay, now I just wanted to open it up for anyone who would like to say a prayer.
Oh God, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of sun hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others. Oh God, make me a hollow Reed, from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others.
I'd like to say a healing prayer for our dear sister Betsy Foster in Round Rock, and for her daughter Juliet, and for all of us who are in need of healing, which is all of us. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thy verily art, the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Baha'u'llah.
O thou kind Lord, we are servants of thy threshold, taking shelter at thy holy door. We seek no refuge save only this strong pillar. Turn nowhere for a heaven but unto thy safekeeping. Protect us, bless us, support us. Make us such that we shall love but thy good pleasure. Utter only thy praise, follow only the pathway of truth. That we may become rich enough to dispense with all save thee, and receive our gifts from the sea of thy beneficence. That we may ever strive to exalt thy cause, and to spread thy sweet savor far and wide. That we may become oblivious of self, and occupied only with thee, and disown all else, and be caught up in thee. O thou provider, O thou forgiver, grant us thy grace and loving kindness, thy gifts and thy bestowals, and sustain us that we might attain our goal. Thou art the powerful, the able, the knower. Verily thou art the all-merciful, and verily thou art the ever forgiving. He to whom repentance is due, he who forgives even the most grievous of sins. Abdul Baha.
Wonderful.
My God, the object of my adoration, the goal of my desire, the all-bountiful, most compassionate. All life is of thee, and all power lieth within the grasp of thine omnipotence. Whosoever thou exaltest is raised above the angels and attaineth the station. Verily, we uplifted him to a place on high. And whosoever thou dost abase is made lower than the dust, nay, less than nothing. O divine providence, the wicked, sinful, intemperate, we still seek from thee the seat of truth, and long to behold the countenance of the omnipotent King. It is thine to command, and all sovereignty belongeth to thee, and the realm of might boweth before thy behest. Everything thou doest is pure justice, nay, the very essence of grace. One gleam from the splendor of thy name, the all-merciful, sufficeth to banish and blot out every trace of sinfulness from the world. And a single breath from the breezes of the day of thy revelation is enough to adorn all mankind with a fresh attire. Vouchsafe thy strength, O Almighty One, unto thy weak creatures. prayers and quicken them who are dead, that haply they may find thee, they may be led into the ocean of thy guidance, and may remain steadfast in thy cause. Should the fragrance of thy praise be shed abroad by any of the diverse tongues of the world, out of the east or out of the west, it would verily be praised and greatly cherished. If such tongues, however, be deprived of that fragrance, they assuredly would be unworthy of any mention, be they words or thoughts. We beg of thee, O Providence, to show thy way into all men and to guide them aright. Thou art verily the Almighty, the most powerful, the all-knowing, the all-seeing.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many people here. I would like to start off, first I'd like to start off with a story. Now, before we get to Dr. Fananapazir, who graciously accepted my invitation to talk to us. Back when I was an undergrad at UT studying Islamic studies, we had, I think the Islamic Students Association hosted a interfaith dialogue, and they had people from all different faiths, and I was there representing the Baha'is. And so you had, a couple Christians, you had the Hindu Student Association, Jewish Student Association. And I had just started learning about Islam and Baha'i faith. I was a major in Middle Eastern language and culture. And there was a visiting professor of Arabic there who I gave my presentation, and I shared some of the quotes from the Baha'i writings about the Baha'i faith, and particularly its relationship to Islam. And this guy did not take too kindly to the words that I had said. And he gets up at me, and he is like almost accosting me after the talk. And he's like, how can you believe these things? Like, there is no prophet after Muhammad. And he was very directed. Like, 19-year-old me was, of course, kind of like taken aback. One of the things at that time was that we did not have any kind of resources like the one Dr. Fananapazir has created at that time. We had a few books about Islam and the Baha'i faith, but Mujah Momin's book hadn't come out yet about Islam and the Baha'i faith, which is a very good one. So I did not have the knowledge to really go back to him and respond to some of his questions. So I eventually connected him with Mujah Momin via email to help him address some of his questions. But he was actually very familiar with a lot of Baha'i concepts and stuff, because he was in the process of translating Sheikh Ahmad's work, for those of you who are interested in kind of the early Bahá'í movement. So I wished that I had a resource like Dr. Fananapazir's book right here, Islam on the Crossroads. It is a fantastic resource that is very dependent and relies on a lot of quotes and passages. So it's like a tool, and I really appreciate how wonderful of a tool it is. So I was good friends with his son, and his son was like, oh, my father wrote a book, here, you should check it out. And thus I had intended to invite him for many years to Austin, and now it has worked out. So just a little background on Dr. Fananapazir is he was born in Iran and spent his youth in Africa. Okay, we have a couple of people from Africa on here, so we'd just like to know, which countries in Africa were you from? Did you spend time in?
Gambia, Morocco, Kenya.
Nice, wonderful. He spent his youth in Africa. He's a graduate of the Edinburgh Medical School. He trained in cardiology and further specialized in electrophysiology at Duke Medical Center. He worked for 15 years as a research scientist at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, studying cases of sudden death in athletes and those with inherited heart conditions. He has published more than 500 scientific papers and has given many presentations at national and international conferences. He spent 2.5 years as Director of Health Services at the Bahá'í World Centre in Haifa. He currently resides in Cumberland, Maryland, where for 11 years he was in practice as a cardiologist and electrophysiologist, and is a Baha'i who has had a lifelong interest in the study of religion and its impact on the world. He is the author of Islam at the Crossroads, which is what we're looking at today, which was published in 2015 and examines current issues facing Islam and their potential solutions. He also currently authored a companion to the Study of the Epistle of the Son of the Wolf, which I have not checked out yet, and I'm really excited to check that out as well. So with that, I'm very excited to have you here. So thank you so much. And so I will pass it off to you. Let me make you a co-host so you can share your screen as well. There you go. There you go. You should be able to share your screen.
Could you put the screen, that screen up? It's very dark. It's very dark here.
Looks fine for us, though.
All right, you can see, okay?
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, that's too much. Thank you very much, Chris, for that introduction. Generous content. Just one minor correction. We have moved now to Alabama, to the south. We are in Huntsville, Alabama. And I see your background, looking at that screen background.
Mm-hmm.
That's Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, and those writings on the wall is God, Abu Bakr.
Yeah, Abu Bakr
Omar,
is right. That is Abu Bakr.
It's on this one.
And Ali.
Uthman right here. Yeah, Uthman right there. Yeah,
It was a church.
This was Ali. Yeah.
It was a church built by Constantine, by Emperor Constantine, and very recently, the Turkey, which used to be the previous Ottoman Empire, converted this church, this beautiful church, into a mosque. And that's really in contradiction to what is the ethics of Islam. You're supposed to leave churches and synagogues alone. Muhammad gave an assurance to them that Islam was not going to either destroy them or take them over. Now, this is clearly a very, very big subject. So I'm just going to go through, discuss with yourselves, and you can interrupt at any time you wish, some subjects. The subjects are supposed to be good. The ones I've selected supposed to be hopefully useful to Baha'is, as well as to those who are investigating the faith of Baha'u'llah. And but before I do that, I also would like to really appreciate the beautiful chanting that was done at the devotional. That was a really beautiful chanting. And I didn't know that Austin had so many wonderful Baha'is. This is amazing. This is an amazing place. Now, what is it according to our writings, the purpose of our faith? And hopefully Emilio can read this.
The chief purpose of the following Baha'i work faith is to acquaint Jews, Christians, Muslims within the realities of their own faith. Its primary purpose is to enable every inherent of these faiths to obtain in a fuller understanding of the religion with which he stands in defined, and to occur a clearer what does that say?
Apprehension
of this, its purpose.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very well read. Thank you. So, in the World Order of Baha'u'llah, Shawi Effendi states that the primary purpose of the faith of Baha'u'llah is to make it possible for the followers of all these religions to obtain a fuller understanding of the religion with which they stand identified, and to understand, to have a clearer idea of what is the purpose of their religion. Whether they're Jews, Christians, and Muslims, our purpose is to enable them to understand their own religion better. Because there are many religions, but there is one faith. And therefore, if they understand their own religion better, then they will become unified in one common faith. So without equivocation, without any sort of double talk, and without the least reservation, Baha'u'llah proclaims all established religions to be divine in origin, identical in their aims, complementary in their function, continuous in their purpose, indispensable in their value to mankind. So these faiths are eternal. The religions are many, but there is one faith. There are many names, but the God's faith is one. So again, Shawi Effendi explains in the World Order of Baha'u'llah that it's not a sect. The Baha'i faith is not a sect, although it is very often labeled as such in the internet. It's not a movement. It's not a fellowship. It's not a Baha'i fellowship. It's not a philosophy of life, how you should conduct ethically your lives. And then it's not even merely a new religion. You can't even call the Baha'i faith a new religion. In fact, it hasn't come, Shawi Effendi explains, to add to all the other religions whose conflicting loyalties have for so many generations disturbed the peace of mankind. This faith is instilling into each of its adherents a new love for and a genuine appreciation of the unity underlying the various religions represented within its pale. So all these other religions, all these other names, who are at the moment in conflict. There are about more than a dozen wars going simultaneously in the world in the name of religion. We haven't come to add another name to the mixture. They are all part of our faith, and the faith of Baha'u'llah is not so much a new religion, but a renewal of an eternal faith. Eternal in the past, eternal in the future. So I think that will pacify any seeker that we are not here to, not so much to change somebody's religion, but to renew their faith. It also implies, if that's the primary purpose, it implies that we should know these religions very well. Otherwise, what are we going to teach them? Our teaching has to be fundamentally different from what the synagogue says, the church says, and the mosque says. but it should be scriptural at the same time. So in the Quran, divine revelation, what God gives us, is described in a number of ways, some of which are as a light, as a living water, as an inspiration, a bath, and a heavenly food. Very similar to what Christ said, I am the bread of life that came down from heaven. Al-Ma'idah. Now, what is interesting, important about these ways of describing revelation is that they are not finite entity, they are infinite. You can always have more light. You can always have more living water, and God can provide greater inspiration and greater food for mankind. There is nothing about these that implies a finality, that there is a finality to God's revelation. So that gentleman, Chris, that told you that Muhammad is Khatamun Nabi'een, he's the seal of the prophet, and the religion of Islam is the final religion, it ignores the fact that God inspired Muhammad, and that inspiration, that Wahy Ilahi, that divine inspiration, there is no end to it. And all these religions bring life to mankind, to humanity. In the Gospel of John, very much right at the beginning, it says, in him, meaning in Jesus, was life. And the life was the light of men. So we turn as Baha'is to the Gospels for that life as well, and to the Quran, and to the Torah. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Life and light are equated together. And in the Quran it says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. God is the light of the heavens and the earth being human understanding, the heavens being the heavens of these religions. Now, in the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, it says, religion is a radiant light. And then it says, these principles and laws, meaning the Torah, the Injil, the Evangel, the Quran or the Furqan, these principles and laws have proceeded from one source and are rays of one light. Light is light. It's made out of photons, just like heat is made out of calories. You can forever have increasing amount of photons of life. They differ, these religions, they differ quantitatively, they do not differ qualitatively. These principles and laws have proceeded from one source and are rays of one light. The one source is God. That's why we say God is one. In the Torah, we say God is Echad, He's one. In the Quran, we read He's Ahad, He's one. It's not that we have understood the nature of God, but what our faith is stating is this: the source of inspiration of all humanity is one. It says more about the purpose of God rather than the nature of God. They are the rays of one light. Different wavelengths, different colors, but the same light. And you can have a candle. The light of the candle is the same as the light of the lamp qualitatively, and the same as the light of the sun, but there is different amounts of it. And Baha'u'llah in the Kitab-e-Iran, written before his declaration, states they differ only in the intensity of their revelation and the comparative potency of their light. So if you want to compare them, you can't say one light is better than another light. They have different functions. They are not better, but they are different potency. How bright are they? The same with water. In Deuteronomy, in the Torah, it describes God's teaching as a dewdrop. And again, in the Bible, it's referred to as rain, or a stream, or a river, or a mighty ocean. Unfortunately, if you see the middle panel on the right, humanity pours its ideas, and pollutes that water of life. The important thing is that your glass has to be empty if it's going to receive this water of life. So in the New Testament, Christ says, "Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness." Blessed are they who are poor in spirit, he teaches. They are blessed, because if you don't admit your poverty, if you don't admit that your glass is empty, how can you receive God's teachings? This is a passage from the 42nd chapter of the Quran, which all Baha'is should know by heart. You can't be a Baha'i and not teach. So you have to be familiar with the scriptures, at least part of it, so that you can present the faith of Baha'u'llah according to their understanding, not your understanding, according to their scripture. And this is what it meant. The primary purpose of the faith of Baha'u'llah is to enable the followers of these religions to understand more fully their own religion. So here it says, Shara lakum min ad-din. God has prescribed for you, ordained for you, the same din, the same religion that he prescribed to Noah. And if they believe this is Islam, well, Noah was taught Islam. And that means a religion of peace, a religion of purity, and that would be right. The same Bah, it says, sent to thee, and the same we enjoined, we gave to Ibrahim, Musa, and Isa. And what is this din? What is this religion? The essence of this religion, the purpose of this religion? Namely, that you should remain steadfast in faith, you should have faith, and not make any divisions in this religion. So Islam, true Islam, does not see any farq Farq means distinction between any of these religions. So they differ in their non-essentials, in their social teachings, because society changes. But in their essentials and in their purpose is one of the same, to bring love and unity. All the divine attributes which have been stated in our faith also exist in the Quran, also exist in the Bible. In their ethical teachings, in their attributes, they're one and the same. And then the Holy Quran states that what is righteousness? It says, Laisal bir, righteousness is not how you pray, whether you turn your face towards the east or the west. In Medina, they used to turn their faces to the north, towards Orshalim, towards Jerusalem. And then suddenly in the middle of the prayer, His Holiness Muhammad turned around and faced Mecca, which was a 180-degree turn. And this verse appeared that al-bir, righteousness, is not whether you turn your faces towards the east or the west, but bir, righteousness, is in one who believes in God. You have to believe in the same God. He's the Rabbul Alameen, it says in the first chapter of the Quran. Rabbul Alameen. Rab means the Lord, Alameen, mankind. He's the Lord of all mankind. And the Baha'i writings explain that Rab, the Lord, is related to the Arabic word Murabbi, the educator of mankind. He is the Murabbi of all mankind. One who believes in God, the last day, Yom al-Akhir, the last day, which is today. In the Bible, it constantly talks about in that day, meaning referring to the day of Baha'u'llah, the second coming of Christ and the glory of the Father. And it refers to the coming of Christ as this day, that day, this hour, that hour. So you have to believe, not lip service, but believe in the last day, that there is a source of inspiration that referred to as angels, the book, and the prophets, and gives wealth. And who does all these beautiful, wonderful things like freeing slaves, establishing prayer, giving alms, and helping people in poverty and hardship. That is the righteousness. To believe in God, the coming of Baha'u'llah, God's revelation, and He is the Kitab referred to in the Quran. Kitab, the mother of all books. The mother of all books, the source of all revelations is with God. And so you have to believe it. And Abdul-Baha constantly, when he came to America, he constantly dwelt on this theme. It's the main theme of our faith. Unfortunately, we do not explain this theme to our seekers often enough. Baha'u'llah has announced that the foundation of all religions of God is one. If somebody asks you, what is the truth? Well, oneness is the truth. In the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, it says, God has revealed the principle of oneness, the law of oneness. It's a law that oneness is truth and truth is oneness, which does not admit of plurality. So whenever you want to explain progressive revelation, do not explain it in terms of plurality, that there are these number of religions, there's 7 of them, 9 of them, or whatever. They have these symbols, the cross for Christ, a symbol that didn't exist in his own lifetime. It was a symbol of his death. And Islam, there is the star and the moon. Or the Baha'i faith, a 9-pointed star. These are not what the faith is all about. These are about plurality. We, in the writings, read about oneness. That oneness is truth. And truth is oneness and does not admit of plurality. And Abdullah explains that this teaching is new. Never ever before has faith described this oneness. So it's specialized to Baha'u'llah. And this was quoted by the Universal House of Justice from the World Order of Baha'u'llah. That the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly assured, established. So if you don't establish the unity of mankind, you will never have peace and security in the world. You may think you have prosperity, but you will not have peace and security because you have to have unity. And it's equally evident that you will not have the oneness of humanity unless you have an organic unity of religions. Hence, the principle of oneness of faith is more than just a slogan. It's not like a Nike slogan, just do it. It's more than a slogan. It's not a pious hope. We hope that this will happen. No, we depend on it happening. It's not a naive plea that there should be religious toleration and that we should all live in peace. It requires a spiritual transformation. And therefore, in one of the tablets revealed after the Kitab al-Aqdas, Baha'u'llah says, consort with the followers of all religions, all shurul al-adyan, barroh wa-rayhan, in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship, to proclaim. So when you have had fellowship, it's not just a fellowship, that's not enough. No, you then proclaim that which the speaker on Sinai has set forth and to observe fairness in all matters. It's not just a kumbaya, let's all get on with each other. No, you have to associate, you have to consort with followers of all religion, with all humanity, and then proclaim that which the speaker on Sinai. Now, who was the speaker on Sinai? It was God speaking to Moses through the burning bush. But the speaker of Sinai, the one that's addressed Moses, was Baha'u'llah through the burning bush. That's what it says here. And then you have to, your treatment of others, your treatment of the friends of the faith should be with fairness in all matters. Not one of superiority, this is what you have to receive from us, but this is what your faith states. And we are sharing faith together.
Just a second.
And go on.
Just one second. I was going to say, we have the benefit of having Adi Masumian here, who has been working on Arabic pronunciation lately. And so you have a lot of great quotes. So I volunteered him to read any Arabic quotes that you put on there to give you a rest. So you can take so you can keep going.
Yeah,
so
please. Who is the gentleman?
Adi Masumian. There he is.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Fananapazir.
Where are you from?
Right here in Austin, with the rest of these beautiful friends.
Where did you learn your Arabic?
I studied in Jordan for a little bit, just for a summer. Some classical Arabic to be able to understand the writings a little better, first and foremost.
Cool. So in Urdun, do they speak Arabic Fusha, or is it their own, or like the Egyptians, or is
more of a Palestinian Jordanian dialect? They don't pronounce their J's like G's, thankfully, like, as the Egyptians do.
Yandra's still here. Yandra's gonna get mad at us.
I thought she might catch that.
Well, if you read well, they'll continue. If not, they will not. Okay,
I make no pretensions to that, but I've been I've been put on the spot, so I'll try.
All right.
The first passage is وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرِّقُوا.
So what does that mean? Without reading the English, what does it mean? What is Hablullah?
Cleave tenaciously to the cord of God, literally, all of you, and don't become divided, I guess.
Well done. Thank you. So this was a rope which was thought to extend between heaven and earth. It's really basically the covenant which comes from God. If you hold on to this Hablullah, this sure handle, all of you together, not just some of you, and don't cause this religion to have any farq in it, any separation in it. Because separation was characteristic of what the Arabs were before the coming of Islam. All the Christians in Medina who were constantly interested that God was three. And they were labeled, these two groups were labeled mushreks. Mushreks are people who are interested in dividing, practicing shirk, division. Something that is one, you make it more than one. I remember many times going past the Pilgrim House in Haifa and hearing Mr. Farutan as I passed by, literally shouting to the Persians particularly, do not be mushreks, do not divide the religion. If you emphasize just one aspect all the time, you are practicing shirk, division. And look at what they've done to despite that, what they've done to the faith of His Holiness Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam. It's been divided into Shia and the Sunnis. The Shias are again divided into many sects, one of which is Isna Ashari. And the Sunnis are divided into several different jurisprudences and Sharia laws, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali. They've divided it. And they've divided themselves from the rest of humanity, from the Jews and the Christians. Although we read that this is the same inspiration. Okay, Janab, read this.
إن الذين فرقوا دينهم وكانوا شيعا لست منهم في شيء إنما أمرهم إلى الله.
So what does that mean? Those that what do they do to the deen, to the deenahum?
They make divisions.
They divide it up. Yeah, they divide it up. And they're part of what? And they break it up into what? What's the Arabic?
Shi'an. Denomination, sects.
Now what sect? Is there a sect of Islam that carries the name Shia, a partisan sect?
Believe there is.
Another jurisprudence. Yeah, 10% of the Islamic world are Shias. They are part of the sect of Ali. That's how it started. In fact, so one of the sects of Islam, a minority sect, not a majority, but a sizable sect, have gone against this. And for those who divide their religion, in other words, they create divisions in the God's faith and break it up into sects, don't have anything to do with them. Leave them to God. So being a Muslim, according to the surah, the sixth surah of the Quran, it's not to have anything to do with anything that smells of division. And then the whole thing in the Quran is to do with transformation. Okay, Janab Adib, read this for us.
كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه.
So did you read this in Urdu?
This particular verse, it's been 5 or 6 years, so I can't remember. But the program that we had, the curriculum that we used, incorporated verses from the Quran left and right for their examples for teaching and for exercises. So it was very useful and very appropriate for this talk. Serendipitous.
So not referring to the English, can you just translate verbatim the Arabic?
Well, not very well, but I can try on the spot. How can you, addressing an audience of multiple people, how can you all deny God and you were dead and he gave you life? He will make you die and will revive you again, and then you will repair unto him, return unto him. Is what I get out of that.
Yeah, so kufr is blaspheming. Kaifa takfuruna means how can you blaspheme against God given this miracle, in other words, that you were dead and he gave you life. He's talking to the Arabs at that time. So in what way were they dead? And in what way did God give them life? If you had to explain this, how would you do that?
I suppose I'm completely biased from Abul Baha's explanations and Baha'u'llah before him, but the spiritual death and then that life.
Is there any other way of explaining that other than it?
No, very true. Yeah.
No, it's just there is no other explanation. It says don't blaspheme, because Muslims constantly talk about kafirs and mu'mins, believers and those who blaspheme, who reject God. He says, how can you reject God? How can you blaspheme? You were dead. Now, what was the period before the coming of Islam called in Arabia? What was their condition?
Jahiliyyah, period of ignorance.
Yeah, period of ignorance. It is that ignorance that was part of their death. And then it says, and he gave you life. Okay, so this part, there is no other explanation for it, this first part, other than a spiritual death and a spiritual life brought by Islam. So we can't suddenly change the way we explain it to become suddenly physical. You have to continue on the same spiritual theme. So go to the second part. It says summa. Usually summa means it follows then, therefore. Yeah.
The second part. ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه.
Should be ilahi rajun. It's just dropped.
Ah, okay, yes.
And then he will cause you to die. Okay. If the first part of death was spiritual, he is going to make you to die spiritually. That is your destiny. That's your ajal. And then he will have to give you life again, and to him you shall return. Is a prediction of a second death of Islam and its revival, its resuscitation, its resurrection, spiritual resurrection by Baha'u'llah. And here it says, وَلَكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ أَجَلٌ. For every ummah, for every nation, there is an ajal. What does ajal mean, Janal?
That's an excellent question. I just suppose it's an appointed time of death, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's a predestined death. There's a predestined death for every religion, every ummah, and you have Ummatul Islamiyya, the ummah of Islam. وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ أَجَلٌ. There is an ajal for it, there is a predestined death for it. And then, please carry on.
So, وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٌ أجل فإذا جاء أجلهم لا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون.
Please carry on.
يا بني آدم إما يأتينكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي فمن اتقى وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون.
So for every ummah, there is an ajal, there is a predestined death. And then when that ajal has arrived, you cannot extend it by 1 hour, nor put it back by 1 hour. O humanity, ya bani Adam, imma ya'tiyannakum rusulun. Yaqussuna alaykum ayati. O humanity, there shall come to you messengers from among yourselves, rehearsing my ayah, my revelation to you. And who shall fear God? Anybody who has taqwa, the fear of God, aware of God's presence, and does good works, no fear shall be upon them, neither shall they be put to grief. This has been shared with seekers so many thousands of times. Every Baha'i must know this by heart, this one too. You have to. Now, in Arabic, if a nun ta'kid in the yatiyannakum appears before imam, then it becomes ta'kid. It becomes there will definitely come to you messengers, not as most translations say, if perhaps God sends messengers, then if you listen to them, you'll be okay. Or wherever and whenever God sends somebody, or if God sends somebody. Why consider the possibility if it's not going to happen because Muhammad is the Khatamun Nabiyyin? If Islam is the final revelation from God, why would you even consider the coming of at least two Rasuls, two messengers? And you'll find that if you look up Quranic translations, and about 40 or 50 of them, if you Google it, you'll find that all the Christians, almost all the Christian translations say there will come to you messengers because they're Christian. They don't even believe in Islam. So they have no axe to grind. You know, they translate it according to Arabic grammar. But also some Arab translators and some Muslim translators, if you go and look at them, they also translated according to the correct Arabic grammar. And that has all been explained in the book. So there is an expectation of future Rasuls and revelation, which again will be part of this one faith of God. So God has many names, but nevertheless, he is one and single. In the letter of the Apostle Paul to the Ephesians, it says, we have one Lord, one Rab, one Murabbi, one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. And they didn't mean the ritual baptism, because they didn't practice that at the beginning. Christ never baptized anybody. St. Paul says, I haven't baptized anyone. But he's saying we have one Lord, one faith, one baptism. One transformation. And in Surah Al-Ma'idah, in the 5th chapter of the Quran, it says, Ya Bani Israel, worship God, my Lord and your Lord. Rabbi wa Rabbikum. We have the same Lord. So what is all this anti-Semitism? We all have the same Lord. It's the same din that was was taught to Moses and to Jesus, he saw, what is this inter-religious rivalry by the mosque? It's taking over the Hagia Sophia is a big illustration of that. It goes against this, that Allah, which they've written after conquering those lands, that Allah written in that mosque, it simply means God. It's an Arabic word for God. He's their God, and he is Muhammad's God. And is the author of the same faith. Everything else, it says in the Bible, is about the goat skin, the leather which holds the wine. It's the wine that's important. It's the wine that causes spiritual intoxication. The skin is not that important. And the rest of it is about imitation. Janaab Bijan, would you like to read this for us?
Of course, I'll be happy to, sir. If the nations of the world forsake imitations and investigate the reality underlying the revealed word of God, they will agree and become reconciled. For reality is one and not multiple. The fundamental reality of the divine religions must be renewed, reformed, revoiced to mankind.
Thank you.
Of course.
So humanity is just following, practicing imitation, taqleed. Taqleed is imitation. It's not investigation. It is imitation. You see it today, Sunday. They've trooped into all these churches, including Austin, Houston. They've trooped into it. And like sheep, they have sat in the front rows and middle rows and back rows and listen to somebody who goes up the pulpit and tells them things. Despite Christ's warning not to call anybody a leader, a teacher, but to investigate the truth for yourself, they've gone once again, another Sunday, and they have read many different hymns, but they have read one prayer revealed by Christ. He revealed only one prayer, and that's the one about the coming of Baha'u'llah. O Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. When there shall be done on earth as it is in heaven. They've read that. No matter what denomination, and there are 49,000 different denominations, they have read the Lord's Prayer. But out of imitation, they haven't taken one step towards saying, well, how is this kingdom going to come? How are we going to recognize this kingdom? How are we going to recognize the coming of Christ, the return of Christ in the glory of the Father? But if they forsake, Abdullah says, if they forsake imitation and investigate the reality, not the skin, the wine skin, the reality, the wine underlying the revealed word of God, they will agree and become reconciled. For Abdullah explained that there are two parts to religion. There's an essential part which does not change, and that's the reality. That reality is one. It exists in the Hebrew Bible, exists in the New Testament, it exists in the Quran, it exists in the writings of Baha'u'llah. That reality does not change. They utter the same speech, says the Kitab-e-Iran. And so they have gone so far away from God that this fundamental reality, this essential reality, must be renewed, reformed, revoiced again, told to humanity. Janab Adib, our co-worker,
فلا تك في مرية مما يعبد هؤلاء ما يعبدون إلا كما يعبد أبواؤهم من قبل.
So he says, don't doubt, don't be surprised what these people worship. They do not worship anything but their fathers, their ancestors worship before them. They're just following them, imitating them. And there are quite a few verses to that effect. And then comes this warning, the thumb.
وإن تطع أكثر من في الأرض يضلك عن سبيل الله إن يتبعون إلا الظن وإن هم إلا يخرصون.
And at the beginning of a new revelation, the followers of that new revelation are in a minority. They are in a minority. And the people who have yet to accept that revelation are in the majority. That's most. I was talking to somebody last night, and she's investigating the faith of Baha'u'llah. He says, very, very difficult. He says, I don't think you fully understand how difficult it is to be part of a minority. When I go to the mosque, I'm part of a majority. It's comfortable. But here in the Quran, Surah Al-An'am, 6th chapter of the Quran, it says, if you follow the majority, they're going to mislead you. It's by definition. If you're part of the majority, you have been misled from God's way. Otherwise, you should be part of it. They follow nothing but tradition, their tradition, their opinion and conjecture. It has nothing to do with the reality that God has brought. It's very, very powerful statements. If somebody's fair, they'll know what to do. And what is the word about misleading? Jano?
يضلك, coming from dalla, to lead astray or misguide.
And where do you find this very critical word in the Quran?
Oh, in the Fatiha, in the first surah of the Quran.
Which verse?
Oh, maybe the fifth.
You're not going to get away.
Let me see. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawm Ad-Din, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Ihdina Sirata al-Mustaqim, Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, Ghayra al-Maghdubi alayhim, Wala ad-Dallin. It's the second.
Well done. It's the last word of the last verse of Surah Al-Fatiha. As I explained, It's one of the traditions say that all that is in the Quran, all the truth is in the Quran, and all that is in the Quran is in the Surah Al-Fatiha, and all that is in the Surah Al-Fatiha is in the first verse, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and all that is in the first verse is in the Bismillah, in the name of God, and all that is in the Bismillah is in the Be, and all that is in the Be, which stands for Baha'u'llah, is in the dot underneath the Be, the Noqte, the point. In other words, the Bab. So anyway, this is about 7 verses, and the last verse, the 6th verse says, Ihtana Sirat al-Mustaqim. What does that mean, Janab? Ihtana Sirat al-Mustaqim.
Guide us unto the straight path.
Why is it that for 1400 years they're required as part of their prayer to say, oh God, guide us to the straight path, if they've been on the straight path? They've been given the straight path. Why do they need to supplicate God and say, oh God, please keep us in the right path, and then not the path that have been part of those who've been misled, isn't that right? And who have been misled, who have gone away from God's way. And that's the last word of that Surah Al-Fatiha. And this is another reference to being misled from God's way. It is following the majority.
ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا.
What does that mean? What should you not do as a Muslim?
Not to abide by or follow that which is not of you, literally. I guess here in the translation, thou hast no knowledge. Ma laysa laka. That can.
No, laysa lakum bihi ilmun. There's no ilm.
Yes, that of which you have no knowledge. Exactly. Yes. Laysa laka bihi ilmun.
Don't follow something that you don't know about.
Mm.
And in a lot of the Muslim world in Africa, where I was in Gambia, they would even learn the whole of the Quran by heart, but they didn't know what it meant.
Mm.
And here in the Quran it says, don't follow something that that you've been born to. Religion is too important to be an accident of birth. That thank God you're just born in the right religion. Don't follow that which thou hast no knowledge. For verily the hearing, the way you examine the truth, investigate the truth, the hearing and the sight and the heart, God is going to ask you, how did you use this? You were given this as a bounty. How did you use it to investigate the truth? And then, please.
والذين جاهدوا فينا excuse me لنهدينكم that's a tongue twister لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين.
Okay, my friend, see if this is more correct. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And those who make this jahd, what is this word jahd related to?
Jihad.
Well done. Or in our Baha'i writings, strive. Have you read strive in the Baha'i writing itself? This is jihad. And jihad is part of that. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا, those who make this jihad in our cause, in other words, they investigate the truth. We will verily guide them in our path. Sobolano. Sobolano is the plural of
Sabil.
Sabil. So there isn't just one path to go. God, whatever path you're in, God will guide you, but it is contingent on you investigating the truth. It's Naim. Has anybody heard the poet Naim from Isfahan, Sadeh Isfahan? Well, he wrote a series of poems, and it's in a book called Gulzar Naim. And at the beginning, he says, وان که فرمود جاهد فینا نگذارد تو را به گمراهی جایگاهت لنهدینهم است تو اگر سالک الاللهی. In other words, he's not going to leave you alone. The one who said, do this jahd in our paths, we will guide you to all paths. He's not going to leave you unattended. This appears in so many of our writings, and it's so powerful a statement. It explains the real jihad. The real jihad is to fight against your ego and your reluctance to investigate the truth. And God knows that wherever a new revelation comes, people are going to say, this is new, we didn't expect it. In fact, there are statements in that ours is a very important faith. So this person must be bad, must be a fasiq. Fasiq means a wicked person. So in the Quran, in order that Muslims may not ignore the faith of Baha'u'llah and just label the author as a wicked person, in Surah Al-Hujarat it says, Bethesda,
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بالنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين.
Fatabayyanu, it's an order. What does Fatabayyanu mean?
Well, it comes from bayan, so I would assume it has something to do with elucidation or explanation, that sort of thing.
Fatabayyanu, yeah, it is derived from bayan, but it means you have to ascertain the bayan, you have to ascertain the truth. So even if a person comes to you with his news, with any news, big or small, fatabayyan, investigate it, in case you lead other people astray, and afterwards you will be sad about what you've done. Now, it says here, it says any sort of naba. Is there a surah in the Quran which is called the Great Naba, the Great News, the Great Announcement? What is that chapter called?
There is a Surah Naba, right? Or does it have a fuller name than that? Or?
It's Naba Azim.
Naba Azim. Oh, I see.
The great news. Al-Bushra, the glad tidings. So, you know, that is the expectation. Here it says, well, you know, even if a evil person comes to you, which you consider evil, and comes to you with any news, then clear up the matter before you cause any damage. And in the Surah Al-Taha, it says, O God, O my Lord, advance me in knowledge. Again, please.
With pleasure. إن الساعة لآتية لا ريب فيها ولكن أكثر الناس لا يؤمنون وقال ربكم أدعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخرين.
Yeah, very good. So the hour is coming. Just as I mentioned, the day is coming, the hour is coming. There is no doubt about it. So when the hour comes, what is it going to do? Just repeat what your mullah has said? Or is it a new revelation? And the hour will surely come. There is no doubt about it. But most men do not believe. Again, if you follow these most men, you're going to be led astray. And your Lord said, Ad'uni, call upon me. If you call upon God, if you take the first step, God will help you with your second step. Call upon me, I will answer you, but you have to do the calling. It's exactly what it says in Matthew. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened. But you know, there will be proud people. There are those who are too big with pride to worship. They are going to enter Jahannam. Okay, Janam. Putting you to work.
This is good practice for me. I appreciate it. وَلَقَدْ ذَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمْ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا أُولَئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلَّ أُولَئِكَ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ.
Again, this word zeal comes. Be misguided, heedless. They have hearts. God has given them hearts to understand, but they don't understand. God has given them eyes, but they don't see with those eyes. They don't have the perception. They have ears, but they hear not the voice of God in this day and age. They're like cattle, nay, more misguided than cattle, for they are heedless. Is exactly out of Isaiah, quoted by Christ. They have eyes, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. They have hearts which do not understand. That is repeated by almost every prophet. A time comes, dear friends, when When the previous dispensation, at least its social laws have to go away. Their name, what it says, Sobahate Jalal, the veils of glory, the things that you find very glorious, the beautiful buildings, the beautiful churches, the Hagia Sophia, these, or statements by scriptural statements that you guys are the most wonderful people. This revelation is the most wonderful revelation. These can become Subahati Jalal, veils of glory that blind people from recognizing the truth. So it says in the Gospel of John, it says, it is expedient, it is good for you that I go away. If the whole thing is about Jesus, I love Jesus, what would Jesus do? Why does he say that it's good for you, a time comes that it's good for you that I go away? And then he explained, because if I do not go away, the next one is not going to come, the Comforter, the Paracletus, will not come unto you, but if I depart, I will send him unto you. I have yet many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. He doesn't have to go away. He can say the truths that Baha'u'llah brought, but that is not part of the purpose of the first coming. It is left to the second coming. So here in the blue are the ethical laws. In green are the social laws. The ethical laws are the essence of religion, in the words of Abdullah. The green are the social laws, which are the non-essential. It doesn't mean that it was not important in Islam, but it means that those laws are subject to change. And the spiritual laws are the same as our faith. That truth should be investigated, not inherited. We saw that God is one. He's my Lord and your Lord. That Islam is the same religion as that of Judeo-Christianity. That they should avoid sects and racism, and that they should not cause mischief or disturbance. La ikraha fil din, there is no compulsion in religion. There should be forgiveness and repentance, sabr, patience, fortitude, honesty, piety, modesty, love, mercy, and compassion. That the believers are mu'minun ikhwa, they are brothers, and that there is a need for transformation, that a good tree brings forth good fruit. The social laws are that you need your declaration card in Islam is that you have to say there is no God but God and Muhammad is his Rasul. If you say that, you become a Muslim. That they should do prescribed dua, fasting, once a lifetime should go on pilgrimage, zakat, alms. You should do jihad, and that the woman's rights are less than men's rights. Prescription of women's clothing, hijab, what is halal and what is najas, pure and unclean, who is a mu'min and who's a kafir, who is a free man, who is a slave, and the punishment. And the punishments: theft, drinking, adultery, apostasy, and blasphemy. Either death or lashings, usually 100 of them. And then Baha'u'llah has changed all of these that are inherent in the teachings of Jews, Christians, and Islam. He's removed all these barriers to the oneness of humanity. That there is a Jew or a non-Jew, a Goyim. That whether you worship Yahweh or you worship Allah or God the Father, whether you're a slave or a free, whether you're a man or a woman, circumcised or uncircumcised, part of a high caste versus ordinary, all of these Baha'u'llah has removed these barriers to human conversation. So to allow Islam to evolve despite the heavy burden of all these social teachings, the Quran talks about nasakh, that there are certain verses which will be abrogated, mansukh, they will be forgotten, or they will be substituted for other verses, or they will be completely erased. All these words appear in the Quran about the revelation, that the revelation is subject to change. And those statements free them from this particularistic, this idea of we've got the truth, the rest of the world are not part of the truth. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you. Thank you, Adib John. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple questions. One person did ask, is this being recorded, available on Facebook, on YouTube? It will be on our YouTube page. So you will be able to go back and reference it on our Austin Baha'i. If you go to austinbaha'i.org, you'll find our a link to our YouTube page.
You mean all this is going to go on YouTube?
Yeah. So I will put it up there. I'll send you the link.
You're getting into trouble.
Well, I've seen your other talks on YouTube. That's how I knew you were ready. I saw the Clearwater Baha'i one, so I knew you were ready. Bijan has his hand up. Bijan.
Yes, but first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Fananapazir, for an excellent presentation. I have actually often thought about reasons behind so much religious disunity and intolerance over many years. And of course, in our writings, Baha'u'llah mentions some of the reasons. But when we also think about today's society and divisions and wars, I often think about some of the perhaps psychological reasons also behind religious disunity. I think there is a deep human desire for feeling special, that we have something that others don't, that some of it is related to power, some of it is related to respect, and so some of it is, of course, it is too much emphasis on certain passages in our whole own scriptures, whether we are Jews, Muslims, Christians, even Baha'is, that we focus on those exclusivist passages to the exclusion of other passages. For example, in Christianity, Christians may look at a passage like where Jesus says, I'm the truth and I'm the way and the truth and no one comes to the Father but through me, or my Father and I are one. And so they take those passages as, okay, I have a very special religion. They don't even call it, I mean, most Christians don't even consider their faith a religion. They say this is just the coming of God taking on flesh to guide humanity and free us from sins and then eternal damnation. In Islam, of course, we have the Khatamun Nabiyyin, or the seal of the prophets. With Jews, we have as Baha'u'llah says, many of them claim that after God sent Moses, his hands were chained. And Baha'u'llah, of course, rejects that and says, may your own hands be chained. In other words, how could you set such a limitation on an almighty God that after your prophet, suddenly God has this huge limitation. He can't send other prophets. And so I'm wondering if you're in your own study of Islam, you have also looked at perhaps the psychological aspects of this desire by humans to feel different and special or not.
Thank you very much, Samia.
Sure.
Very, very elegant question that you've asked. And you're quite right. You're absolutely right. It's a feel-good thing that you've got the truth and nobody else has the truth, not all the religions. But it doesn't. If you look at this is why I quoted all those passages from the Quran, not even from the Hadith, from the Quran. There are also Hadiths as well about progressive revelation. And for example, in a hadith, in a Shia hadith, it says, and God, and that this religion is the seal of what has happened in the past, and it is the opener of what will happen in the future. So it was never meant, earlier on, was never meant to be that we have the truth, the whole truth, and nobody else has this truth. And one of the things about our faith, our beautiful, wonderful faith, is that it is logical. And what we have, the advantage is that if there is objection by Christians, we'll say, well, the Jews had exactly the same objection, as you very elegantly said. And this is how the early Christians explained those things to them when they were confronted with those issues. And if a Muslim throws Khatam al-Nabi'in, we are likely to say, well, the Jews and Christians objected to the Prophet Muhammad in Medina on the same basis. And some of it is not very well understood. That, in the Quran, it said, Ya Bani Adam, imma ya'tiyannakum rusulun. God is going to send you rasuls, messengers. So if he was the end of prophecy, because that's what a prophet is, what a Nabi is, he has a Nabai, he has a prophecy. Those prophecies have been fulfilled, and there is expectation of coming of messengers. There's another verse in the Quran, which again is often quoted to show superiority of Islam and the finality of Islam. And it's in Surah Al-Ma'idah, after a long list of what you should eat and what you should not eat, what you should hunt and what you should not hunt. And that is the last chapter of the Quran. It says, after that last list of instructions, it says, and today I have akmaltu lakum dinakum, I have completed your religion and prescribed to you Islam. Okay, if religion is complete, there is no need for the coming of Baha'u'llah. But then, what happens to all those other verses about God's revelation being infinite? Faith has to be logical. And so in order to maintain an exclusive, this feel-good thing that we are a part of an exclusive faith of God, number one, it denies how Islam came about. It had it faced these difficulties because the religions in Medina believed to be the final word of God. And it ignores all these revelations and anticipations of a great message, of a glad tiding. So I don't think these are really, maybe there's a psychological need for it, but it's not part of the revelation. Yeah, if you go to Rabbi Maimonides, Rambam, his name was Rambam, and there's a hospital in Haifa named after him, Rambam Hospital. If you ask Rabbi Maimonides, and he has a whole library of books about Jesus who could not have been the Messiah, and how Moses was like God to the children of Israel. His was superior revelation. He was a superior prophet. God spoke to other prophets in dreams, but to Moses, he spoke mano a mano, man to man. And when he sent him to Pharaoh, God says, I have made you God unto Pharaoh, the big ruler of Egypt. So they would say that. And then they would turn to Deuteronomy chapter 4, and at the beginning it says, don't add to the Torah, don't subtract from the Torah. And what happens? In reality, what happens? It is the Jews who added and subtracted from the Torah in a huge compendium called Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. So beyond the Torah, all these rabbis wrote what they thought were the truth. 300 years before the coming of Christ and up to several hundred years after Christ, they accumulated all these sayings, with one rabbi saying, I believe this, and another rabbi says, I agree, but I say this. So they added and subtracted. It doesn't mean that God is unable to add or subtract, because then what happens with all the prophecies of Isaiah, that God will bring to light the things that they've never thought of, that he will create rivers in the desert. And if they say that, well, a Christian also says in the last book of Revelation, it says, don't add, don't subtract to anything that's in this New Testament. If you do, God will add all these diseases that are mentioned in this book. And if you subtract even one word, God will take away your name out of the book of life. It is the Christians who are not supposed to add or subtract. But what they did was they produced whole libraries, whole encyclopedias of scholarly thought, of what the church believed, what was the dogma. And it is that dogma that divided them. Because every time they defined what the truth was, the Christian faith became divided. So,
if I may quickly follow up, Dr. Fananapazir, Maimonides and the rabbis are a great example of why not only us as Baha'is, but I think followers of all religions should also look at the truth claims of other religions and the scriptures of other religions. We as Baha'is, of course, have no problem with that because we consider all past divine religions as our religious heritage. They are all, as Baha'u'llah says, this is the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. So for us, we are all one religion. We are all rings in the same chain, basically. But the problem with, I think, the current dialogue with followers of other religions is often they don't want to go beyond their own scripture. They have no interest in studying. Like if you're a Christian they have no interest in, often, I'm not saying all of them, of course, often they have no interest in looking at Buddhism or Hinduism or the Baha'i faith or Islam, because they are so set in their own ways and in their own scripture as the ultimate path or path to God. And so I think in our dialogue with followers of other religions, we need to encourage others to look at the scriptures of other faiths. That way they can realize that they are not the only ones who are making those exclusivist claims. So if there's a Muslim who says Khatamun Nabiyin, or Muhammad was the last prophet, we need to, in our discussions, show examples of the same kinds of claims in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Christianity, and so on. And same thing with followers of other religions. That way, I think they can come to an understanding that, okay, I always thought that as a Christian, I was the only one who was making these claims. No, apparently the followers of other religions are making the same kinds of claims. And that, I think, can open up new vistas to religious tolerance and eventually respect and unity.
I see this is a beautiful explanation, but I see this a little differently. And that is that there is enough, if you're a Christian, there is enough in the Bible for you to accept Baha'u'llah. You know, and the thing that we have to, and there is enough in the Quran for a Muslim to accept Baha'u'llah. But what we need to do is go step by step through the 1,000 verses that Baha'u'llah has quoted from the Quran, explain those to them. Once they accept that, yes, the revelation of Baha'u'llah is the same as the inspiration that came to Muhammad, it's the same source. And then if Baha'u'llah says, well, you know, now that you've accepted this, you know, there are also other religions that, you know, say the same thing, and here are examples of it. You know, if at the very beginning, and this is a very common Baha'i practice, if at the very beginning we say, you know, I'm sorry, you know, you have to also understand that Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, the religion of my mother, you have to know all of these things. The poor guy is going to get confused. You know, he's not going to create faith. What we should do is to create faith. So this is why Shoghi Effendi states, our primary purpose is to enable them not to understand all these religions, including the Baha'i faith. Our primary purpose, our first purpose, is to allow them to understand the religion with which they stand identified, and a clear apprehension of its purpose. What did Christ actually say? What was the purpose of Christ? And I think if we do another something which we often do, emphasize only the revelation of Baha'u'llah and not consider Ayyam Qabl, you know, as it says in the Kitab-e-Iqan, consider the past, and Baha'u'llah goes through the past one by one. If we ignore that and just mention Baha'u'llah and how beautiful are our writings, we also are not doing what is fair. And we are also introducing subconsciously this idea that ours is a superior faith.
Great.
Thank you. We have to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming today. Now, the good news is this is part one. Next week, we're going to go a little deeper into some of these things. So I am very, very grateful for Dr. Fananapazir to come here and share with us today. I will put up the video on YouTube and send out the link so people can go back and reference it and that sort of thing. We do have a couple questions that popped up in chat that I will save, and we'll start with those. I'll send them to Dr. Fananapazir, and we'll start with them next week as well.
Can you mention them, please? Can you mention them so that I know what I should say at the beginning?
Yes, I will send them. I'll email them to you.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone. It was good to see everyone. And yeah, so fantastic. And if you have any other questions or stuff you would like answered next week, go ahead and feel free to email me. Most of you know my email address, lankychris@gmail.com. So
I have one question.
Please.
Is the fishing in Austin as good as they say it is?
I do not fish myself. I have heard lots of wonderful, great things of fishing. But you're in Huntsville. Huntsville has phenomenal fishing. So